Hey guys, my name's Gloria and welcome back to my channel. No direct sunlight today. My last video hurts to look at. I'm very sorry for that, but I've learned my lesson, so the lighting is better and I don't look quite as terrifying. Today I want to add to my video series called The Book Wasn't Better. This one was actually accidentally on this list. I was just going to do an ordinary review of this book, but then while I was reading it, I started to remember the story and I realised that I might have seen the movie, and I think I saw the movie when I was like a kid. I at least saw the very end of the movie, which means I was waiting for the end of the story the entire way through the book. But the book is The Dead Zone by Stephen King, which is also a movie starring Christopher Walken. So today I want to talk about why I prefer the movie to the book. There will be some spoilers. There will be spoilers for the entire story because I want to talk about the characters and the whole aspects of the plot or lack thereof in the book and the movie and the differences between the two. So if you haven't read this or seen the movie, they're both generally the same, so if you've done one of those you know the story, but if you haven't done either then you might not want to see the spoilers in this. So the book follows the story of John Smith, who had a childhood accident. He had a head injury when he was a kid and later grows up to be an English teacher, and he falls in love with another teacher, and after a lovely date with Susan, his beloved, he has a tragic car accident which is near fatal but causes another head injury, and he is in a coma for 4.5 years. In the time that he's in a coma, his mother goes hysterical. She goes Christian fanatic and is convinced that this happening to him is God's will and he's meant for something greater. And also his girlfriend Susan eventually moves on, believing that he's not going to wake up, and she gets married and has a kid. But 4.5 years later, John awakes and he has supernatural powers. John realizes that even before he was in the coma, he seemed to have a lot of luck with things. He wins impossible odds on a Wheel of Fortune game that he plays on the date with Susan, the last date they have. But when he wakes up, he realizes that when he touches people, he can see things about them, he can know things about them. He sees the past of his doctor, the neurosurgeon who helps him, and realizes that his mother didn't die in World War II, she just got amnesia and she lives in California now. And he sees that the physical therapist's house is on fire and she needs to go right now to save it, which is true. And he also gains some unwanted fame by telling a reporter that his sister died from a drug overdose, which is true, and disturbs the man into writing a lot about him. And later he saves some kids from fire at a graduation party by convincing some of them that there is going to be a fire. But he can touch people, he can see things, he can't see everything, and the things that he can't see, he says that they're in the dead zone, or he's getting information from the dead zone. That's where the name comes from. But his powers come along with headaches. He's had some brain damage and his doctors are worried about him, but he recovers somewhat from his injuries from the coma and tries to live his life as best he can without poor Susan. That part is just heartbreaking, I think, in the movie or the book. But from his fame, a local sheriff from the town of Castle Rock enlists him to try and find out who a serial rapist is, who's been murdering young women and girls for the past few years since he's been in the coma, and he correctly identifies him as the deputy of the sheriff. And then he shakes hands with a politician who he sees in his future that he's going to be the president and he's going to end the world with war, pretty much. And in convincing himself that he needs to assassinate him, he does try and shoot him, but manages instead to get a photographer to capture pictures of him using a baby as a human shield, which, you know, funnily enough today, I honestly don't think that would end anyone's political career, to be honest with you, but it does for this guy, and John dies in the melee of trying to kill him. So that is the whole plot of the book. Well, I use the word plot loosely here. The movie is very much the same. There are the same main points, the same main characters. Obviously it does condense things a lot more, and things move a lot more quickly in the movie. In the book to me just stretched on for a long time. Stephen King is famously, he dislikes plot. He likes to write stories of the characters. He likes to develop the characters, and he doesn't like thinking of where a story will go before he actually writes it, or even while he's writing it. And you can really tell that with this book, because it just seems rambling and random. It's just a guy with some psychic powers, and it was like Stephen King was just like, oh, I wonder what could happen to him today, and it just didn't seem to connect at all. The entire book didn't seem to connect, and whereas the movie, it feels, I can't say that the movie connects better, but I think it's more enthralling. I felt a lot more for Christopher Walken's John Smith than the John Smith that I was with in the book. He seemed like a nice guy, but he was, surprisingly for a Stephen King character, he was just a really nice guy, and he just got sick. And normally, you know, his characters, they have a bit more depth to them, a bit more something else, I don't know, bad thoughts at least. But this guy, John Smith, is just super nice the entire time. Also, the politician that he eventually tries to kill, Greg Stillson, he is introduced in the prologue. He's the first character you're introduced to. He kicks a dog to death. Super nice guy. But then he's dotted in through the book just to keep him in your mind, but he doesn't actually cross paths with John Smith until the last 70 or 80 pages of the book. So the whole time, because I'd seen the movie as well, I was waiting for him to show up. I was waiting for him to realize that this guy was going to be president, and it takes so long to happen, and for it to be the penultimate thing that happens in the book, it took way too long, and I wasn't really fully invested in the Greg Stillson story of that guy. And I feel like he was a really messed up character, and he had a lot of layers to him, evil layers, but I think Stephen King could have really delved more into him, and he should have brought him in a lot more into the book. So The Dead Zone, I would recommend the movie with Christopher Walken. I think I've seen a lot of movies with him in them, but for that being early in his career and stuff, I think he really does a great job with the character, and I was really rooting for him. It was a really passionate performance. The whole lovers that missed out, the fact that he wakes up from a coma and his girlfriend is married to someone else, that is just heartbreaking, and it's really well played in the movie. But I would recommend the movie. The book is fine. It's quite thick. It's about 400 pages. Oh no, it's about 500 pages, and it just doesn't tie in together. The Dead Zone as well, it's very vague. It's not, normally he delves more into research, like the characters researching what's wrong with them and where things are coming from, but in this it's very vague. In fact, it wasn't until I watched the movie that Christopher Walken says the things I can't see, they're in the dead zone. In this, it's just kind of, you're wondering whether he's seeing things from the dead zone, or he was in the dead zone when he was in a coma, or things he can't see are in the dead zone because he can't see them. It was a bit confusing, but the book was fine. I just think the movie was done much better. I think it could have been condensed better, and I think maybe some of the plot points could have been tied together better. But I suppose, is what happens when you're not too interested in the plot. Which is fine if the characters are great, and some of the characters are good in this, but I think you needed to delve deeper for me to really invest in them over any kind of plot or cohesive story. So that is my The Book Wasn't Better review for Stephen King's The Dead Zone, and I will probably not be keeping this book. I'll probably be giving this away because I'm not going to read this again. Might watch the movie again, but I'm not going to read it again. So thank you for watching. I hope you're staying inside and washing your hands. It is my birthday month, so if you'd like to like and subscribe or comment down below and give me a free birthday gift, that would be fantastic. And I shall see you in the next video tomorrow because I have a lot of time on my hands.